Okay, perfect. Welcome to Sports CTO Talks. In this series, we would be connecting with industry leaders from sports and technology, where we will simplify sports and technology for you all. I am Ami, your guide on this journey through amazing mind of sports tech leaders. We will dive deep into innovations, understanding the industry, from AI to cloud, from cybersecurity to sustainability. If it is sports tech, we are talking about it. Today, we have a very interesting guest with us, Mr. Rishabh Jaiswal. He is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and the Doon School, Dehradun. Rishabh founded Sporting Ethos as India's first privately owned sports science and medicine center in 2012, and a decade later founded Athlete First Foundation to further the efforts towards scientific athlete development in India. Rishabh has been steadily building the foundation towards a scientific approach towards health, fitness, and performance areas in the Indian society with Athlete First Foundation. And his aim is to take Indian sports to a well-functioning unit from ground up to all the way to excellence. Sporting Ethos was founded in 2012. It is a leading sports and healthcare company specializing in sports science and medicine, offering expert solutions in athlete development, post-surgical rehabilitation, and corporate high performance. And Athlete First Foundation was founded with the main aim of improving the efficiency of Indian sporting ecosystem by helping pre-elite athletes achieve high performance, longevity, and a seamless transition to life after sports through scientific athlete management. We welcome you, Rishabh, to the podcast.
Thank you, Ami. Thank you for having me.
Today he would be talking about how India is creating future champions. He would be talking about grassroots level sports and how we can aim from grassroots to gold. So Rishabh, my first question to you is, like what inspired you to build grassroots development into the sports in India, and how do you envision contributing to the Indian sports ecosystem?
Right, Ami. So I think where it kind of started was I was always a sports buff. I was passionate about sport. I was at a boarding school, and there also we played a lot of sports. So it is something which, as I said, I was always passionate about. When I was about to complete my IIM Ahmedabad, management degree, I was thinking about doing something of my own, but I had to find something which I felt was meaningful and purposeful for me. So while working, in the medical devices industry after IIM, I stumbled upon sports science, and then I looked into it. At that time, even cricket, which is kind of the sport which has the maximum facilities, even our elite cricketers, Indian team cricketers, were going abroad for their rehabilitation. So that was the sports medicine part. But when I looked into it further, sports medicine was just one aspect of sports sciences, which includes your exercise physiology, your psychology, along with injury management, your nutrition. So all these things, biomechanics, everything falls together. So as I started doing more research, as I started visiting centers across the country, I quickly realized that this entire ecosystem, while we have the talent, this entire ecosystem which can actually help an athlete with their performance was largely lacking, and still is kind of coming up even now after a decade or so. So I think that is the problem I really wanted to solve, when I felt that although this is going to take a long time, we were 20 years back, compared to the Western world when we started. We are still probably 12 to 15 years behind, but that's something I thought will be I can kind of invest my efforts into. So that's how the journey began.
Okay. So, what do you do? Like, how is athlete at the center, and what are the activities the company does?
Right. So, just I think I missed answering your previous part of your question also. I mean, how we are looking to contribute to overall athlete development in Indian sports is very simple. At the end of the day, the highest stakeholder, the biggest stakeholder in sport is the athlete. So
Absolutely.
while there are other, elements which are extremely important, like infrastructure and finances and all of that, at the end of the day, the athlete has to be developed well. And where we are kind of facing a problem is, although we have a lot of talent, they are not getting the right guidance to go up to the highest level. And therefore, only a very small percentage of athletes are going up right to the elite level. Now, what happens here? Obviously, we have a physical facility in Delhi, and we've just upgraded and we've set up Delhi NCR's first center of excellence in December 2024. So the process here is very simple. Whenever an athlete comes to us, we basically profile them fully in terms of measuring their physical fitness, analyzing their nutrition, what is their mental, kind of sports psychology assessment. There are different, assessments for that, their biomechanics. And one key thing which gets missed even at the elite level is what is the workload and recovery management.
Absolutely.
Because that, I think, is actually one of the biggest contributors to burnout in Indian sport. So we take all of that in, and then we set goals based on where the athlete is at, and try to cover each of them, set specific areas which the athlete can work on, and then we keep working on it in an incremental and progressive fashion. At the facility, of course, we have the entire team of experts. Because everything is interdependent, it doesn't work in silos. So strength and conditioning, sports physiotherapy, sports nutrition, sports psychology, all of them are interrelated. If you are injured, your strength and conditioning will not happen. Your workload would go down. So your nutrition will have to change accordingly. You may go through certain mental states in terms of anxiety or fear of having the injury again, or just when am I going to get back. So it has to work in an integrated fashion. So we have all the experts in house, and everything is kind of looked at in that possible manner. So that's how we work. We measure, and then it's an individual level thing to counsel the athlete, counsel the coaches, counsel the families and the support system, that why a scientific approach is going to lead to long-term results, and not just be focused on short-term rankings and achievements. While it is important, you have to look at the long term.
Absolutely. So, like, I just want to understand, as you're working into the industry, like, what are the awareness and how can you spread awareness about organizations who are working for athletes to reach, like, to the grassroots levels so they can reach to you at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean that's that's something which is still trying to solve. I think the kind of biggest focus has always been on education and creating awareness about why this is important. And then in terms of reaching out to organizations, and now there are a handful of organizations with this approach, maybe around 8 or 9 companies and centers across the country which do similar work, such as us. Is that I think all these centers require, they put in a lot of capex. If they are good centers, they have got the experts with the right qualifications. So it comes at a decent cost to run such facilities. It is not easy, especially what happens is that people tend to kind of bucket it into, okay, it's a physiotherapy center or it's a fitness center. No, it's when you're trying to run a combination of everything. So, for example, let's say the strength and conditioning which we provide, the ratio of a trainer to athlete is 1:2. Now, to be able to work with that model is not very easy. So, even if one is getting the athletes to reach out, that can happen through social media and campaigns, which is fine. But at the end of the day, how many athletes are able to afford that? Is the biggest question. And as a private limited company, how many athletes progress or work can you subsidize or discount? Because you have to, obviously run the show and then keep adding value to it. So the fact of the matter is that Indian sport relies on CSR. Indian athletes rely on CSR. Very few athletes have the means and the funds to be able to afford it, right? But again, if you ask any athlete, at the grassroots, who are talented, that okay, what is it that will help you reach the highest level, they would say the financial support, which is true, but it is not the entire picture. Because unless you have this scientific support, unless you have the other kind of right kind of guidance, the right coaching, the advanced coaching support, just the financial support alone will not help. So I think where we are currently as a country, private sector alone or government alone is very difficult for us to be able to help athletes at a larger scale and at a higher efficiency to progress from the grassroots all the way to the elite level. That's where corporate CSR comes in. That's where and then with that you can start creating more awareness, and you can start kind of serving more athletes. So that's what the reality is today.
Absolutely. So, like, I'll take the CSR questions little later in the podcast. Like,
Right.
there are a lot of programs going on in India, like Khelo India, Target all like the tops, and they play
Yeah.
a pivotal role these days,
Yeah. Yeah.
into identifying athletes or grassroots level athletes. So how does that work? Like, is it beneficial? Is it not beneficial? Is it helping the athlete at the end of the day?
Definitely. I mean, it is beneficial, but at the same time, I mean, I'm someone who's always in favor of quality than quantity. So as far as TOPS is concerned, it's an elite level program, and some upcoming pre-elite level athletes are also covered in TOPS. Most of the TOPS funding happens again through CSR and through PSU CSR. But it's meant for the people. It's a target Olympic podium scheme. So if you see someone capable of qualifying for the Olympics or doing well at the Olympics, that's what TOPS is meant for, and they're doing a great job. The only thing is that TOPS becomes a cyclical kind of a fund. So closer to the Olympic years, like this time around, we had the Asian Games and the Olympic cycles clubbed in together back to back. Otherwise, it's a 2 year gap. So the funding was sufficient, and there were a decent number of athletes. But if you look at the immediate TOPS quota, I think a lot of athletes have been dropped because the budget has been dropped. So again, it's funding dependent, but TOPS definitely helps a lot of athletes get the right facilities. My personal take on that would be that yes, we are sending a lot of people abroad for the right kind of coaching and support through TOPS, but hopefully in the time to come, a lot of this happens within India. That's what we would like to see. As far as Khelo India is concerned, I think in terms of events, in terms of awareness, in terms of participation, definitely athletes can go and participate and try, because no athlete, if there's only one or two competitions where you can do well, or let's say if you don't do well at the nationals or your main state event, you have nothing to show on your CV, and it's difficult to kind of climb up the ladder. So Khelo India does give you the different Khelo India events, whether they are sports centric or gender centric, or even the para Khelo India, which happened recently, they do give an additional platform for athletes to be able to showcase their hard work. So that way it is good. The only thing is, when we look at it from a scientific background, and that is not only Khelo India, I think in terms of just choosing the number of competitions when you're playing the competitions is very important, because there's something called as periodization, which basically means having different seasons across the calendar. And when you have an off season, you're not playing competitions, but you're going back and working on your refining your skill, working on improving your physical fitness significantly. You have to give a window of the into all of those things regularly, otherwise you'll get stagnated. So it's very important, I think, at the individual athlete level and the coach level to take a call as to, I need to skip certain competitions. Because again, if you don't do that, then you are kind of doing a lot of competitions, you're not learning. And let's say you pick up an injury, you're spending the off season nursing that injury rather than improving your physical fitness levels significantly. So just being a little wary in terms of not just Khelo India, but not just like participating in too many events, because you don't have time to improve. So that is my only kind of issue with decision making when it comes to participating. But Khelo India as a platform, I think, and it's not just events, they also have Khelo India schemes, and they have tie-ups with academies where they provide some kind of support. But my personal reading, because even with the foundation and otherwise I interact with hundreds of athletes every year, is that I think it needs to kind of become more structured, and it needs more cohesion. But the intent and the mindset is there to be able to deliver that. But I think we've got some way to go when it comes to the Khelo India academies to function as proper units.
Absolutely. So, like, when we are talking about this, like, how can young athletes be involved into various type of competitions? It can be at school level, or, when it is during their youth, and how to nurture and ensure that they are playing for a longer period of time.
Yes. So one of the things we follow in principle is something called as the LTAD model, which is the long-term athlete development model, which started in Canada in the early 2000s. Now LTAD also has its pros and cons, but principles we have taken from that. So the long-term athlete development model says that based on the age, and of course you have to individualize it as per the athlete, because if you have a precocious talent, you can't just rely on age alone. They may be ahead of their age, right? And certain athletes will bloom later. But what it basically says is that you will have to kind of introduce the athlete to multiple sports, not focus too much on one sport. Otherwise, only one certain muscle groups are getting used, or mentally you're getting fatigued. Slowly and steadily, as you're growing up, your workload per week increases. Your training to competition ratio would change. Initially, you're spending more time in training and less time in competition. As you're progressing, because you build your base, you can spend more time in competition. So there are different phases, and you have to be able to appreciate and go through that. So let's say if someone likes, I think at the end of the day, even not just at the grassroots level or at the 10 to 15 age group level, but even at the elite level, it's all about enjoyment. If you are not enjoying something, then it's very difficult that you will be, and that applies to all of us. The only thing is, when a child is 10, 12 years old, the pure excitement of participating in the sport is their main focus. But as they are growing up, we have to also understand they're going through adolescence. They want to have a social life, they want to have their own me time, and it needs to be very well balanced, so that they can go on for a longer period of time. I'll just give you an example, and I can actually say that with a lot of conviction, that in 80 to 85% of a lot of racket sport academies, 10, 11-year-olds are spending 20, 25, 30 hours per week of
Wow.
training.
Wow.
Whereas the rule of thumb is that number of hours of supervised training per athlete under the age of 16 should not exceed the age of the athlete per week. So if you have an 11-year-old,
Yeah.
you should not be doing supervised training for more than 10 hours. So
10
even if it is
hours.
5 days a week, you're saying, 2 hours a week. And even in there is a primary sport. So you should not be specializing in a sport, which means you should not be spending more than 80% of your time in one sport. So 80% of those 10 hours, only 8 hours, and 1 or 2 hours you should be doing some other strength and conditioning or some other sport, right? And we are talking about 25 to 30 hours. Now again, if the precocious tolerant talent may be able to do 13 or 14 hours. You also have to look at it from a nutritional standpoint. A 40-year-old boy, a 40 kg boy or girl, whose nutrition requirement is, let's say, who's playing 6 hours a day, is around 22, 2300, 2400 calories. That is probably our intake to maintain our weight. So how do you expect that child to be able to eat that much, consume that? So we are talking about performance, we are talking about rankings, but we are actually compromising on overall health, growth in adolescence. So I think if there is good talent, so there are two ends of the spectrum. If there is good talent, they obviously need to be nurtured. But if they are doing too much too soon, then it's a problem. On the other hand, if you don't have any access whatsoever to sport, then it's a problem, because you will not be able to learn the skill. So I think a balance is very important, especially in metros and tier 1 cities where the infrastructure is there. I think that understanding needs to happen. So again, to answer your question briefly, is that athletes should be given exposure, but at the same time guidance should be given. And I am actually all for regulatory kind of measures as well. So for example, anyone entering a under 12 tournament, 10 to 12 tournament, should not be playing more than 6 competitions or 5 competitions in a year. Right now, if you see a tennis player who's 11, 12 is playing at least, or a table tennis player, they are playing 2 competitions every month on an average. So they end up playing at least 15 to 20 competitions every year. They are traveling, they are missing school. It's not sustainable, it's not feasible, even if they are ranked 1 or 2 in the country or in the state. So that is where we have to be very careful as we kind of develop the talent.
Absolutely. So, and India is a country where finances also matter. So, I
Yeah.
want to understand from you, when like you're meeting n number of athletes, coaches, companies. So, like, how are parents, playing a role into the finances? Are they able to cope up, or is it difficult? And how is it?
It's very difficult. And probably 5% of the parents would be able to afford the fees required for coaching and travel, etc., for 5, 6 years, 7 years at a stretch. The moment you have more competitions, international competitions, you are again, kind of compromised in terms of finances. And even when you are spending all of this, you don't have money to spend on the other things, which is like, say, sports sciences. Now, a nutrition program, let's say, or a sports psychology program, that all is left for later. That, okay, once we reach the elite level, then we will take it up, because we have limited finances. So we need to first pay for the coaching, and we need to first pay for the travel, right? So the priorities also. The other thing is, the parents are making a lot of sacrifices. People are quitting their jobs, staying full-time, traveling full-time with the athlete. People are shifting locations and their base to travel to move to another city because a particular coach is good. And while those sacrifices are obviously mean a lot, and I think kudos to the parents, sometimes it takes a toll on families together as well, because what you're doing in the process is you're actually putting all your eggs in one basket, and there's a lot of pressure. A parent not working, traveling full time with the athlete, and kids these days are very smart, right? I mean, they're very mature. So even if a parent is not saying anything, but and the whole mindset about winning and not process, because if you put so much of an investment, you're always thinking about winning, and a child can perceive the disappointment, even a small gesture of disappointment on a parent's face or body language, and then they start thinking otherwise. So it does take a lot of toll on families, and it's not easy. So the success stories we hear that okay, the father sacrificed so much, the mother sacrificed so much. It is really tough. But there are so many other parents and so many other families who've also made exactly the same kind of sacrifices, but may have not been able to achieve in terms of the level of success as we define it in sports.
So, like, I want to understand the ratio, like when we were talking about CSR. Now,
Yeah,
I want to, merge these two things, that
yeah.
how can CSR play a role into helping these athletes grow over the period of 5 years, 7 years, according to you, and in a holistic manner? How can that help?
Right. So first, let me tell you, I mean, excelling in sport will remain one of the biggest challenges. You compare it to an IAS entrance exam, or an MBA entrance exam, or getting into Harvard, or whichever metric you want to apply to. Getting excelling in sport is also very, very tough to reach the highest level. Even if you look at Division One athletes, which is the top level of athletes in the US, I think I don't exactly remember the percentage, but it's less than 1% who make it to the highest level. And Division One is the top bracket. So we are looking at that numbers. Now, therefore, it is important that if you're trying to increase the chances of success, there are funds available for the development of an athlete from a younger age. What that does is also the amount of funding actually, let's say you're spending 1 CR on a TOPS program or a 2 CR on a TOPS program on one athlete. That 2 CR can easily cover everything combined for 25 to 30 athletes
Okay.
every year, right? So, and when you're investing in 30 athletes, what you're doing is you're first giving them a chance to go to the next level. Second is, if this support is not there, chances of burnout of these 30 athletes is very high. I would say probably two-thirds of them would burn out in the next 1 or 2 years at the age of 14, 15, or 16. So you're helping them preserve, right? So what I'm looking at is, let's say out of 100, without the support, if 1 or 2 athletes are making it to the highest level, with this entire support, maybe 12 or 13 or 14 would make it to the highest level. And therefore, we need to have a long-term success metric. The success metric for CSR or impact cannot be whether the athlete has made it to the Olympics or won a medal or has it played at the highest level. The long-term success metric has to be is whether the athlete who participated in sport, who plied their trade in sport, did a good job, tried their best, went as high as they could, but eventually they are leading a very successful life, healthy lifestyle, even after sport. Because right now there is a negative vicious cycle which athletes experience. I mean, we've heard all of our news of top athletes being jobless, not
Yeah,
having any means, having health issues, health crisis.
absolutely.
It's a lot of toll which athletes' bodies and minds take. So even if we are, helping these athletes at the highest level, our responsibility is that long term they have successful lives and careers, because that will create a positive cycle. When people see those examples, because a lot of parents in India still, while they're encouraging sports more, when they look at these examples, or even ex-athletes themselves, they would not want to put their children in sport given what they've experienced, because there's no money, there is no proper lifestyle, no job. The only option, with all due respect, is to become a coach, and not everyone may enjoy becoming a coach, right? Or may not excel at it also. So the idea is to equip them, in terms of education, vocational training, and help them transition. This is what I saw in Australia when I was researching for Sporting Ethos back in 2011, 2012. So they have something called as career after sport. And there's a proper module in all the Australian institutes of sports sciences, which is present there. So from day one, they start ensuring that there is a career plan in place once there, because let's say you have an injury which you may not be able to recover from, or you have a certain setback you will not be able to recover. What do you do then? So again, coming back to the main point, I think there have to be two metrics of success. One is short term, that yes, instead of two athletes, we are having 15, 20 athletes reach the highest level out of 100, and the other 70, 80 are also doing very well in life. And they set the example not just for people in sports, but people in other, kids in other disciplines who want to take up journalism or some other profession. They feel that okay, it is actually they feel confident that I can make the choice of what I enjoy and pursue that career. So that's what we are trying to achieve.
Absolutely. And like, if I want to ask as a person, like, to understand CSR in detail, how can a company get involved with athletes? At what fronts? What can the company contribute to? How much can a company contribute to? I would like to understand that.
Yes. So obviously, I think the CSR in sports was included in CSR back in 2011, 2012, 2013, around that time. So it is an important part. Still, I think there are obviously a lot of companies, I think maybe around 200, 300 companies who have started investing directly in sports. But I think how sport is still placed as a CSR impact, it's still kind of on shaky grounds, because it is not rooted in the principal 7 or 8 CSR platforms as
Correct.
they are defined. So let's say rural, women, health,
Education.
education.
Mhm.
So then sport seems like more of a luxury compared to these basic necessities. So unless we are able to link the impact of sport, which is having to the society, to the youth, and also how inclusive it is in its nature. A para athlete, let's just say, who we support, who's from Junjun village in Rajasthan, what kind of aspirations they can create in that village has actually it's a very soft kind of an impact. It's not a measurable impact per se, but it does impact the society at a higher level. So I think first of all, understanding that okay, it may not be in your core or thematic area as per definition in the past, but understanding how you could utilize the power of sport to create an impact at the societal level, some of it rooted to the platform, but some also at an aspirational level. How they can get into it, obviously, it can be at the grassroots level, where more access and more facilities are being provided. I think a lot of companies are doing that in their own way. The problem obviously we are trying to solve is that every level of the pyramid needs to be met. So the company
Correct.
needs to choose which level I want to address. If you want to address grassroots, you want to address pre-elite, you want to elite. I don't think requires that much because there are a lot of takers already. But I think everything below elite, there are 3, 4 stages which need to be supported. So they can support a group of athletes. We usually have a program which is across different divisions. Let's say someone is returning to sport after surgery. There's a para athlete program. There is an emerging sports program. New sports like climbing, rugby, fencing is still relatively new, right? The other is also there are infrastructural projects in sports, so such as rehabilitation centers or sports science and sports medicine centers. It also falls in the purview of CSR in sports. So if a company wants to actually have a legacy where athletes can be serviced with these facilities, so let's say that's what we can happen, that if they are able to help build the infrastructure, companies like Sporting Ethos or other companies can actually run those centers and provide services at a subsidized level to a lot of athletes. So it can happen at an individual athlete or a group of athletes level. It can also happen at the infrastructural level. And yeah, I think it's just how you are setting the metric for measurement of the impact, because I do see a lot of companies and they have their own kind of criteria, but sometimes they see that okay, how will helping these 20 or 25 or 30 athletes help in the larger scheme of things. But again, as I described, that every athlete has the potential to create immense impact. We supported one taekwondo athlete from Kashmir, right? And the kind of aspiration she can develop for the state of Kashmir and the girls who are participating in sport, I think has huge potential. And although it's one athlete, so I think the way we measure the impact needs to change, the way we analyze, and I hope the company heads, the CEOs, the CSR heads are able to look at it in that light as well.
Absolutely. So, like, it's a two-part question. Like, when you were talking about the female in Kashmir, like,
Right.
what as a sporting industry, as a sports industry, are there any scholarships for women who are getting involved into sports? Are there any benefits, or is government or private industry helping them to grow and evolve in the sports at the end of the day?
Okay, so do you mean women athletes or just women?
Women athletes or women as a whole also.
Yeah. So I think a lot of foundations who are there in sport right now are definitely encouraging women athletes particularly. Also because I think it's a part of the CSR agenda. But I also feel, I mean, like our company is mostly run by women, right? So and we've had majority of women athletes, girls who have actually we have kind of provided services to at Sporting Ethos. And therefore, even here, like we have more than 50% of our scholarships are mandated will go to women athletes. So I think there are a lot of platforms. The only thing is that again, the guidance has to be 360-degree. It cannot just be money given, or you go and visit the physio, or you go and visit the nutritionist, or you go and plan your travel. There has to be hand holding at a psychological level, at a women's health level, because let's say weight sports, combat sports, where you're losing 7 8 10% of your body weight for a fight, and we had this thing in Olympics as well. The toll it takes on women's bodies in the long term health is immense. So is there someone looking at that aspect, and also counseling the girl that, okay, while you're willing to give it all and lose weight in different ways, these are the implications on your reproductive health, on your hormonal health, on your overall health when you will be 30 40 50 60. Let the athlete make the choice, but it has to be an informed choice. So it has to be, while there are avenues and there are private players as well, and NGOs as well, who are definitely encouraging women in sport. But I just feel, again, I think the depth of the intervention can definitely increase.
Absolutely. And how crucial is development of technology, because everything these days, or in this era, it's about technology. So how can sports and technology be combined, and it can help a athlete or coach or sports as a whole?
Right. So, first of all, I just want to, I think I'm glad you brought this up, because a lot of people, and I'm talking about people who are very influential, are investors and funders, and uh, they are confusing sports science and sports technology.
Correct.
A faster shoe material or a faster swimsuit is not sports science,
It's
it
not
is
sports.
sports technology.
Correct.
Right? Sports science is this core disciplines which I described in the beginning. So first of all, we need to differentiate that. Sports science has its own place, sports technology has it. I think based on my experience, you need the right people, you need the right infrastructure, right? Obviously, you need the right athletes, coaches. So all of that is needed, and you need equipment and all of that. But I think the key thing, which in any organization, and that is true even for athlete development and sports, is that the processes need to be followed. By what I mean by process, the communication, let's say, between an athlete and different stakeholders, whether it's the coach, whether it's the administration, the sports science team, that has to be effective, proactive, constant, over communication, right? These are all things we talk about in organizational behavior as well. So technology can come in, and with AI, etc. now I think is much easier, and we're already implementing it at our organization, although at like scripting it at Google Sheets level, etc. Is that if it can help with your communication, if it can help with having consistent processes. For example, if a review needs to be done with an athlete every 6 weeks, where are you maintaining that review? Are you doing it on pen or paper? Are you just setting reminders on your phone, or is there an automated email which will come every week to everyone in the ecosystem that you have this review? Or let's say workload and recovery management, right, which I touched upon. I think it's the make or break. Now if an athlete is reporting on an online form, how much they played, what was their sleep, and then you have variables like this, the rings which are there in the market, they are capturing data. They are filling in that data. Now how often are experts actually looking into that data and making sense of it and giving feedback? That is where technology, automation can really help make quick decisions, proactive decisions before an injury becomes really big, can you kind of evaluate it and then start addressing it? So I think for me, technology in sports in the Indian context has to do with being able to make the processes and the communication much more effective, and touching upon all these points, of course. And I think that would really help. The other part is, of course, I think equipment. Still, like, we have sourced most of our equipment from abroad, and then there's a big duty on it and all of that, and it's difficult for organizations like ours, which are not industry giants or government institutes, to procure such equipment. And so therefore I think, like, IIT Madras is doing a lot of incubation, and I feel other IITs such as the one in Delhi, etc., should also kind of get, let's say you're making timing gates, sensors which basically help you measure how quickly you're going. They just, you pass through them and the time is measured. We have enough brains to be able to manufacture these and do it at a very good accuracy level, and that would really reduce the cost. So when you're talking about grassroots access, when you're measuring a 20-meter timing dash by stopwatch, let's say a 10-meter dash which takes around, let's say, 2.5-3 seconds for an athlete, if there is a inter-user variance of 0.3 seconds also, that's a 10% error. So what timing gates do is they actually measure it accurately. Now that is only accessible to a handful of people, a handful of companies. The moment we build cheaper technology for measurements, equipment, etc. inside of India, then it can reach out to the grassroots as well. And then we can start having more meaningful data and more meaningful integration. The government has used technology to kind of create databases. They are working on the age fraud thing also, for example, where softwares and technology is being used at large. But yeah, these are some of the use cases. But for me, the processes and the communication, automation and technology can help with that. I think that will be really, really key.
Absolutely. So, what are the few challenges, or it can be primary challenges you are facing or you are seeing in the sports industry? People, athletes, coaches, or government as a whole, or parents, like including the whole ecosystem of sports. What are the few challenges you see that they are there, prominent are there, and how can we rectify it or we can improve on it?
Yeah, I think because I'm in this industry, I mean, I would say, and I think otherwise also, I think just we need to understand sport better, is what I would say. It's not like taking an exam. The more you keep, revising midnight, early morning, the better you will remember. And even that is also not true if you're not sleeping properly or eating properly. But yeah, I mean, we look at it that way. Exam ke liye padhna hai, if I can use in the end, then we'll get more marks the more we study. It doesn't happen like that in sport. The more you train, there's this U-curve, there's this law of diminishing returns which will kick in. We need to understand that first. That we have to figure out that what is the optimum workload, what is the optimum amount of training we need to do, and then that actually extrapolates to a long-term vision of sport. You have to go phase by phase. You have to keep improving right now, and we are a very result-centric society. What are marks kitne aaye, blood test mein kya report aaya, normal nahi aaya, even if it is high but it is within the range, we are okay. So we are very result centric, and what that does is that every time, no matter how much a coach or a parent or any support system want to help the athlete, they are looking at whether they've reached the semi-finals, what was their timing, etc. But you have to say, okay, what is it on a daily basis that is in the athlete's control they could do in terms of their mobility, which would help them improve, so that eventually that will contribute to their timing, right? So you have to look at the smaller controllables, the processes, and our mindset need to shift that even if a person has won a tournament or won a match, they may have taken shortcuts and not applied the skills and strategy a coach might have asked them to, and they may still have won, but they may not have followed the process of sleeping properly, measuring their hydration, warming up, cooling down. All those things they may not have followed. But we are okay if the person has won. We are not looking at the processes. So I think we need to start educating about processes. Obviously a scientific approach, obviously a long-term approach, because we need to understand sport. And every time there is a 14-year-old like yesterday who becomes a sensation, parents put a lot of pressure vicariously on their children, and they start expecting a lot more. So we have to be much more balanced as parents, and definitely coach education is also very, very critical, because unless the coaches, because they are the captains of the ship, sports science will remain a support system. we need to equip more and more coaches, and that's also a part of our initiative, where we are doing a coaches scholarship program. We are trying to upskill them and also groom them in a manner where they can produce athletes of the next generation in a more futuristic and long term fashion.
Absolutely. So, like, as India, it seems like, we are bidding for 2036 Olympics. So,
Mm.
according to you, like what are the requirements into the ecosystem where we need to develop? Because there are so many things,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
grassroots to the elite level, on small infrastructure, huge infrastructure. There are so many things.
Yeah.
So, what are those things which need to be taken care of primarily?
I think infrastructure, according to me, is least of our challenges, because we become very good at making infrastructure. I think we do it fast, we do it well. Of course, they can be more efficient always, but I think that's something I'm not worried about. And I think while there's a lot of debate about where to spend, etc., I just feel that Olympics is actually a golden opportunity to streamline a lot of systems and processes. So if you look at Japan, if you look at the UK, if you look at China for that matter, the way I'm not sure so much about Brazil, but the way they aligned their systems, their high performance systems. High performance system is basically something which is happening at the highest level in a consistent manner, right? So each of their sports federations, the way they groom the athletes, the scientific approach, the process, everything we've spoken about in this sport gets aligned into those systems. It cannot only be infrastructure and logistical.
Correct.
And if we can approach it that way, I feel the next 8-10 years is a golden opportunity for us to skip 2-3 steps, skip 8-9 years, and use the Olympics as a platform to establish these systems. China, for example, used to be this place that we always heard about it, that okay, thousands of people are training and 5 kids will make it, so it doesn't matter, at least you have five Olympians or 5 gold medalists. But China is rapidly changing that approach. Now, if you see the sports science setup and the amount of independence and the autonomy each discipline of sport has, they're hiring Indian SNC coaches and physios. I know 2-3 people who are really good, and they are being hired by China. So they're agnostic to who they're hiring. They're hiring from different parts of the world, and they have adopted a modern scientific approach to training their athletes. So I think the Olympic model, the Olympic platform, we should, yes, utilize it to advertise India and Indian sport to the world and build infrastructure. But I think it's a golden opportunity. But this would mean genuinely for a lot of people, together in a private public partnership, rolling up their sleeves, getting their hands dirty and going in depth. If we are going to talk about surface level stuff, then we will miss this opportunity of even hosting the Olympics and not being able to make a breakthrough as a sporting nation.
Absolutely. I have a few more questions, but
Yeah.
I'll ask you
Yeah.
one last question.
Sure. Sure.
Like, what are a few takeaways from a decade or more than a decade of experience of yours into the industry? Like, what are a few quick takeaways for the people listening to the podcast?
Uh, I think the sports industry in India still has to see its sunrise. Uh, I'm not sure how good a businessman I am. I've tried to work on a concept because I was passionate about it. I've tried to create a business out of it, but I'm trying to generate value in different ways, and in sports and organically a lot of other things also we are doing for road traffic accident victims. Um Doing sports business in India is tough. There are reports which talk about it being a huge industry, but if you leave the fan engagement and the fantasy sports out of it, it is still a struggling industry. There are a lot of meaningful startups. There are a lot of people who are really, the good thing about this industry is a lot of passionate people have gotten into it, right? Because it's a purely a passion thing. It's very difficult to do this business. But a lot of us are still grappling with our own problems. We are trying to survive. We are trying to make things happen. We are pivoting, and we are not able to collaborate with each other also. I think there has to be a supportive ecosystem, certain legacy businesses. I mean, obviously organizations which have CSR, the government, but certain legacy businesses need to come in. And some of them have, but more legacy businesses need to come in and try to work together with these stakeholders. Because you will have the financial backing to set up your own projects, but you will not find the passion and the grit amongst the several founders and co-founders in sports, even if you have all the infrastructure and the finances. So I think it's high time that the government and certain legacy businesses, the 10, 15, 20 which exist in India, come together and equip the other ecosystems, the other startups, the other sports companies to kind of work on it together and solve this problem. Sounds very idealistic, but I think even if it starts happening at a regional level or a city level, I think slowly and steadily in 10, 15, again, this is not going to happen overnight. When I started it, as I told you, for me, it was a 40, 50-year project to get at par. So we are only 12 years into it, but I do see it happening because I think, again, the power of sport and the passion of the people involved, I think, is going to drive it.
Absolutely. Rishabh, we'll move on to the next segment. That's the rapid fire questions.
So, okay.
I'll ask you a few. You'll have to be quick in answering.
Okay, all right.
Okay. One legend athlete who's inspired you.
Okay. I would see. I think before I answer this, I have to answer it quickly. But as a fan and now as a person working in the industry, my mindset is very different. So as a fan, I would say Rafael Nadal. But if I have to say in the industry, I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but I would say Virat Kohli for the way he thinks, the way he talks. I think that really is very impressive. That's what all athletes, not just his fitness part, but the way he approaches his sport, his awareness. I think that's great.
Okay. Khelo India, tops, or any other competition. Name one if you have to pick.
Tops is not a competition. I would probably still say the nationals of each individual sport on its own. Yeah.
Okay. Most underrated sport in in India today.
Most underrated sport. I would probably. I don't have an. I think there are a lot of. I think everything except cricket.
Okay, that I agree. That I agree with.
Yeah.
Okay, a state that's nailing grassroots sports development.
I mean, as far as the newspapers are concerned, I'll say Odisha, but I think they've done good work.
Okay.
For sure, Odisha. I think they have taken. They've created a example for others. Yeah.
Okay, a sport you'd love to see every school in India promote.
I would say the easiest to do it would be climbing. That'll
Uh,
be interesting. Yeah.
Wearables or video analytics, which tech has more game-changing potential at grassroots level?
Yeah, I think we need to get away. We need to get away from hardware, so it'll have to be sophisticated, easy video analytics. Yeah.
Okay. One tech tool you think every young athlete in India should be using?
Uh, Probably something which monitors their heart rate or sleep. Yeah.
Okay. If you had to take Virat Kohli for dinner, where would you take him?
Oh. Uh, I'll invite him home and have a good personal discussion.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
The next is like you'll have to answer this question into 30 seconds.
Okay.
Like, what is your understanding on role of AI? Because everything is AI these days into
Yeah.
the sports segment.
Yeah. No, I think is same applies to AI. What used to apply to fire at our times. It can be a good servant, but not a good master. I think there are definitely a lot of use cases where you can make life easier, you can make work easier, more efficient, more standardized. But I do see a lot of youngsters who will struggle in communicating effectively because of easy access to AI and conversations becoming automated.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rishabh, for the amazing insights on grassroots level sports and how, things can be managed from a micro level. Like, your insights were helpful today on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I also enjoyed it. I think the variety of questions you asked, we were able to kind of, I hope we were able to bring out a decent picture in front of everyone who's listening. Yeah.
Absolutely. So everyone, let's stay connected on understanding of more of sports and technology. Please share this episode with your friends, families, and the people who love sports and technology. We will meet next time in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring.